You must be able to communicate who you are to an employer. You must be able to tell your story. If you can't, they don't get you. And you have very little time when you're talking to them to make sure that they get you. There are three separate stories that I want us to work on during coaching. And these stories are your career story, a crisis story, and an obstacles story. Now, this particular video, we're going to start with the career story. And this is going to get you thinking. Then we will work on the other two stories. It's important that you know your stories, you practice them, and we will practice them in our session. And I'll go over them with you to choose great words for you to use. Now you're going to start at the beginning. Your career. Who are you? What do you do? Why do you do it? When did you start becoming passionate? Where did you do it? This is all about you. You're going to start at the beginning of your career. And I want you to think about that little kid going to school with her backpack and ready to take on the world. Were you the kind of little kid who did gymnastics? Were you going to grow up and become a fireman? Did you make paper wings and jump off the garage, breaking your leg when you tried to fly because you were so interested in avionics? What is going on in that little kid's head? Where's your passion? I want you to think about that. I want you to think about the early days of your career. Do you remember when you felt lost? When you were new? When just figuring out what to do? How to show up? Who was important? Figuring all of those things out in the early days, I want you to think about that. Think about the obstacles that you've overcome. And you have overcome obstacles. If you're human, you've overcome obstacles. I want you to think about personal obstacles and career obstacles. Your story is unique, it's compelling, and it's yours to tell. So you need to learn to tell it. And that's what this is about. What are the elements of a good story? First of all, a good story has 3 acts. Act 1 is the setup, early achievement, figuring out who this character is, making this a nice person. This is a character that you're going to want to root for. And when you're telling your story, you tell it in a way that your listener will want to root for you. Then you go to Act 2. What were obstacles and challenges? What did you accomplish? What did you learn along the way? That's your second act. What were those obstacles and challenges in that second act? They were bigger and meaner than in Act 1. Act 1 set it up. Act 2 showed you the ugly stuff. Act 3. Act 3 is when you are interviewing for that job. This is your Act 3. This is where you are going to end up. You never interview that this job is a step along the way. Never. Not if you're in leadership. So your Act 3 is everything that brought you to this interview. I want you to think about how you present yourself. A log line of a movie, you'll read log lines to tell you what movies are about. Now let's look at this one. I love this. Transported to a surreal landscape, a young girl kills the first person she meets and then teams up with 3 strangers to kill again. Boy, that doesn't sound like the Wizard of Oz, does it? But it is. Think about it. That is the story. So when you are telling your story, it can be told in a way that may not properly represent you. This log line doesn't tell you about the joy of the Wizard of Oz and the excitement and the kindness and the goodness. No. But it does tell you what the story is, doesn't it? That's why you're doing this. Your story is who you are, what road you've taken, and your triumphs. Your story brought you to this interview. You lead with your accomplishments. When you interview, all those obstacles that you had in the past are in the past. Now you flip that interview around and you're there to solve their problems. The obstacles that you have overcome, your triumphs, will now be their triumphs. You can do the same for them. This is your third act. This is the happy ending. Remember, when you are telling your story, it's all about the company that you're interviewing for. Your story is not going to include any issues that you have going on in your life right now. You had obstacles. You overcame these obstacles. You are triumphant. You are the hero and the heroine of your own story. Now, I want you to look at the attachment in this session. Make your notes, fill out the attachment, and let's talk about it. I will give you, you're going to tell me how you describe yourself and how you tell your story, but first write it out on the form. Then I'll give you better words to use, I promise. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.